Hey there, Daniel Hartman, Community Machinery, Sackville, New Brunswick. And I was just recording a shop improvement video. There's been so much improved around here lately, and it's just incredible to see progress. And think about, I spent all holiday Monday. It was New Brunswick Day. I was here at the shop. I just painted from about noon to 8:30, somewhere like that at night. And it was getting dark out by the time I was done and wrapping up. And it just felt so good to have stuff cleaned up. So there's a shop improvement video. You can check that out. It'll be somewhere on my YouTube. On this YouTube, I wouldn't say it's my YouTube. I would say it's bigger than me in terms of looking at how to grow, how to make this place connect with more people, and thinking about what are some of my goals. How is this place really communicating what I'm about, but also thinking about how much I feel I would be further ahead now if there were more people who really knew how to connect with me when I was younger. So thinking about, there's that guy out there who's like my younger self. I mean, that could be anyone, but there's going to be people who resonate more in certain ways. And think about some ways that started into different mentoring relationships and things haven't gone where I might have hoped, and looking at, is that always a sign that there's something I can do better? And definitely, always, in every single one, it's never like, oh, there's that person, they weren't trying. Sometimes it's good to stop and have some space to re-engage in a relationship. But for the most part, I can always say there's so much to learn yet. And thinking about some of my big goals and realizing, vulnerable goal, I've been thinking for a long time, it'd be nice to have my own place by the time I'm 40. So that's 460 days, 460-day goal. So there's some kind of a business philosophy. Maybe it's from Agile or some kind of different development as far as sprinting to a goal. So for me, I've been wanting a house for the last, I'd say like 13 years. I mean, not just a house. I always used to joke a shop with an attached house, in terms of a shop that's got everything, even a house. So I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm going for it. And a lot of times my enthusiasm, I don't know if I would call it my enthusiasm. Sometimes it's hard to find courage. Sometimes it's hard to give myself permission to feel all right. Like, oh, I charged more than I would have liked on that job. I didn't have a good conversation with that person. I don't deserve anything. Or I really just want a little bit of work and I don't want to have to deal with people. So I'll just do something that's easy, that doesn't involve having conversations, and not prioritize the long-term vision, not really honor the full value of what I could bring to things. And feel really vulnerable a lot of the time. Standing up for myself and being assertive. So that's a huge challenge. That's one of the things I think is really worth exploring as far as having a YouTube channel and looking at what this life is really about, how to make peace, and the whole concept of atonement, not just making it a heady concept, but really putting things into action. As far as there's a saying I love, we love all people equally, we just express it differently, which is really that same thing as if we're judging and holding others accountable, there's that one finger pointing and then there's three fingers pointing back. That one blows my mind. And there's that when we're compassionate, when we empathize with others, we're also empathizing with ourselves, being more loving. And oh, one of the things I just got onto recently is the David Allen Getting Things Done, and just learned how to use an inbox on my desk. That also has blown my mind in terms of there's a great video that David Allen's done. It's something like what to do about interruptions, and talks about the inbox. And I completely didn't expect that. I didn't know how it worked before. And now I'm like, oh wow. And the other concept, which I feel like is obvious, but he uses this expression, your head is a poor office. So just write everything down. Don't try and file tasks in here. It's not what it's meant for. It's the idea that we don't need more time. We need more creative thinking space. It doesn't take any time to come up with a mind-blowing idea. It just happens. But if we fill up our mind with all this other junk, it's like, oh, gotta remember this, gotta remember that, and whoa, that just filled up all that space instead of, oh, gotta do this. It's written down. It's written down. Once in a while, compiling those lists, finding a more straightforward way. One of my objectives is to find a way to have a live Google Doc on my phone that can be my to-do list that is saved to the cloud. I have faith in the cloud that it will do me right, and also can be saved on my phone. And I've lost to-do lists before, so I know it'll be all right. If I lose a to-do list, and I can say, hey, I tried my best. I used the best tools that I can access from my laptop, from my phone, use technology, be able to directly input things, be able to do more things most of the time. And because there's a lot of people out there who say, oh, let's not use technology. I know for years I have my books that I logged in different days, but I've got a whole filing cabinet full of these crazy books upstairs. There's no electronic searching tool to go through them, to find a past contact, any of that stuff. So I think that's the promise of the electronic age, where there's so much information and we can access so much so quick. And at this moment, I'm just feeling so grateful when the phone, because when I get here by myself, sometimes I don't put the toilet seat lid down, but I'm getting better and better at just all the time, just in case someone randomly shows up, having a clean washroom. And it's amazing. I listen to these Paul Akers, and people can say what they want about Paul Akers and his enthusiasm. But man, I'm like, I just want to take care of that washroom now. Or I even got into listening to this Lean Health book after listening to the 2-Second Lean book. And now I'm like, oh man, I almost went and had a sandwich for dinner, but instead I went and collected all these vegetables up, and I ate different, just because I've been listening to this Paul Akers Lean book. And right now I don't have a whole lot of people that I get together with on a real deep, solid friendship basis here, and that's something that really feels like it's missing from my life. And on a deeper level, I'd love to have more people that do some of the things that we're always doing at the Art of Mentoring years ago, as far as singing songs and telling stories and acting out plays and skits and games, action games. There's some that I really love that a group of friends get together and play, like Otter steals fish from heron. Otter steals fish from heron, yeah. So one person's the heron and has to touch the otters that are coming in to attack and grab the fish. And it's just so fun. And there's fox stalking the hare, where the hare's got to turn around and catch the fox as moving, and then can send them back before they come up and touch, and then you switch. So there's stuff like that, man, I want to be doing that on a more regular basis. I want to be every day, if I'm not pumped up, have something that's boom, gonna just hit me upside the head. Like, hey, happiness is a choice. It's a choice. And I didn't know that growing up. And I would say I don't feel that all the time, but there's a part of me that's more open to admitting it all the time. No matter where my health is, no matter what's going on, there's just a deeper experience that's possible. And my $460, my 460 day goal as far as having a place of my own, but more importantly, a place to share with others. And what the heck is that about? Thinking about how to craft a vision, thinking about what do I have? Because thinking about the past year, being in the shop, and thinking there's a lot of things that feel like failures, a lot of things that didn't come to fruition, a lot of things where even providing mentorship, thinking that after looking at that, it's tough because it means that I've really got to be here a lot of the time. It really limits my flexibility in terms of if I've got a rush job and I've got to go pick up material and I'm supposed to be here. Well, I feel like I'm getting pulled in two different directions. So one of those things has to go until either things are more established or there's a different type of work that doesn't involve filling in gaps as far as being the one that picks up the material and having a standardized process for so many things. So that's one of the things that I think I've got this value. There's so many people that have taught me so many different things. They keep me from getting hung up on day-to-day conflicts that arise. And now that I feel like I've got so many tools, and how do I share those in the world? And what am I going to do to be of greater service? I mean, for years I thought it would be so cool to have a residential mentorship program where people can just jet in, provide them a place to stay. I love the idea of being on some kind of a farm, and so many of the people I knew back in Ontario, especially who had organic farms, they'd have a summer crew that would be there, and everyone would get fed. There would be a cook. Someone would cook the meals. And it was just really great bonding time. The thing about that doesn't happen in a lot of industrial environments, how to have some of that same energy, but then also having that green space, having somewhere where there's not the density of metal all around, which if we think about how our minds work and pliability, I don't think the analogy that metal attracts a lot of dense people, and if we look at the societal perceptions of people who weld, I mean, welding, while there's a really cool aspect of molten metal and it's like alchemy, but at the same time, look at the majority of people welding. It's a pretty rough crowd. There's a lot of people who on the weekend they just drink so much that they don't come in on Monday. And it's the reason we have addictions is because there's things we don't like looking at, certain layers. And for people that are in those spaces, I mean, if we mask something with an addiction, okay, you might have the feeling of that pain, but it's in there, and it's got to either come out or you just mask it with alcohol your whole life and never get to know who you really are, what you're really here for at the deepest level. So stuff like that, man, no judgment, because I know I've got my own, I got my own vices as far as been eating a lot of peanut butter honey sandwiches and peanut butter banana sandwiches, and sometimes I look at social media stuff in terms of I get these moments where I'm like, oh, I just feel like zoning out. But luckily, I was going and using up so much of my data plan because I don't have internet here that it forced me to cut loose or to cut the social media. And that has completely changed my, oh, I don't miss it. It was driving me crazy, just like the news, because I didn't have the mental discipline to block things out, to not get drawn into that black hole. So, and at the same time, being more intentional, a lot of times I go out, I download a whole bunch of YouTube videos that would align with what I wanted to learn. Great stuff. TED Talks. You know, what makes relationships really work over a length of time, especially like romantic relationships. What's the mechanism? And hearing how it's, you know, it's not having like a hot body to look at. It's more about seeing people that we have a romantic connection with at their place of mastery, doing the thing they're really great at. And I mean, for me, I could think of how some of my ambitions, like public speaking, where I'm going to be giving a talk at the Guelph Organic Conference this winter in January. So really looking forward to that and thinking like, oh, those are the kinds of things, being on that razor's edge between my competence and the unknown is really the thing that keeps me vibrant and alive. And that's the thing that provides that attractiveness. I mean, the looks are skin deep. They're a fleeting thing. They're not what really builds and nurtures a relationship. So things like that in TED Talks. Or I was watching a whole series of, what the heck was I watching? I was just researching some people that I thought were really interesting. For some reason, I got on this thing about, what's his name, the Steve Jobs, and there's some different Steve Jobs interviews. It's funny when someone has a plural name that sounds pluralized and then not using it pluralized. Or like, if my name's Hartman, if we called them Hartman, Hartmen, as far as like the bigger family, that would be interesting. Anyhow, tangent, rabbit hole. So the last thought, this might be the last thought, is I'm going to keep ramping up. I've been working on this business plan. It started from this one-page document. This really cool guy, Charles in Moncton. He nurtured this thing in me. So now I keep filling in all these different systems. And now that I know, don't leave anything here, this is not an office, I keep jamming stuff in this business plan. And it's become really clear in terms of how to start documenting processes around the shop, thinking about developing some kind of product, looking at, one of the YouTube things I was researching is business partners and how people go about finding business partners. There wasn't too much on the finding as much as there was structuring agreements, what things need to be talked about. So I did a whole compilation around that. That was really solid. The topic of guilt earlier and things I feel guilty about. Borrowed some money to get this shop up and running, and it's never really come together in terms of having a lot of billable hours. So comment below if there's something different, like a different paradigm. You're like, hey, this thing, and I don't know what it is, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to ask, because a lot of times I see people comments and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know how to make it work. But there's this idea it's a Seth Godin thing. If you've ever heard of Seth Godin, Purple Cow, and Lynchpin, great books, highly recommend. There's this Seth Godin concept. Don't do brainstorming like your traditional throwing things out there. I think he called it Edge Quest. It was just this whole thing where if we grew up in the whole brainstorming and so many ideas got poo-pooed, like, oh, that won't work, that can't do, the Edgecraft, whatever it is. It's just any dumb idea, any crazy, dumb, stupid, terrible idea. Just be like, hey, I don't know anything, but maybe this could be a thing. And maybe if a lot of people said the same thing, then they'd be like, I don't know how to make sense of this. Maybe someone else can help me see the light on this thing. Because right now, it's not so clear. The things I'm next to positive about is developing a product. What it is, not clear. There's so many things that I think are so cool. Been thinking about things like external combustion engines, like Stirling engines. Like, be cool to build something like that, especially in a province where we have so much wood heating, but doing it on a commercial level where it's a viability of running a Stirling engine to create rotary motion, using that heat, storing the heat, and having just a net gain of power. I don't know. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know if that's a completely real thing or not. But there's so many things. And I feel the other thing I've been feeling guilty about lately is that there are people who reached out. There was a CBC radio interview back in March 7th, about the shop and what's going on and what were the intentions at that time. And there was a bunch of people who stopped in and reached out, and I just have not followed up. There was never a really clear path. I think of all the friendships and connections I've really maintained to this day, and sometimes it felt like they took some work. They weren't automatic. As far as, there's a couple visits in and maybe didn't see someone for a while, and then all of a sudden crossed paths and started hanging out after having a really good conversation. And then years later, it's like, oh, how were we ever not friends? How did we ever not hang out all the time? So thinking about stuff like that and realizing there hasn't been a lot of connections that came about that I really did as much as I would have liked to maintain. I feel like there was some that had potential, and I didn't see, it just wasn't clear as far as, and there's some ideas I had that never materialized, like having a shop night. I felt like there was some logistical hurdles around insurance and wanting to have everything legit that I didn't come up with a way, and maybe it's one of those things that I think maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe that's all it is. I'm not exactly sure. Anyhow,